The woman in the mud-stained wedding dress stumbled into Great Bend, Kansas, just as the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty Main Street, her veil torn and dragging behind her like a ghost of broken promises. Katherine Walsh had been left at the altar 3 hours earlier, standing alone in the small church, while the entire congregation watched her groom ride away with another woman. The whispers started immediately. How he had only proposed because her father promised him land. How he had found someone prettier, someone with a dowry that did not come with conditions. How Katherine was too plain, too stubborn, too everything wrong and not enough of anything right. She had run. Simply gathered her skirts and ran from that church, from that town 15 miles south, from the pitying stares and the cruel laughter. Her feet ached in the impractical white shoes, blisters forming with every step. Now she stood in the center of Great Bend, a town she had only passed through once before, with nothing but the clothes on her back and 63 cents in her reticule. The people on the street stopped to stare. A woman in a wedding dress, alone and disheveled, was entertainment enough for a Tuesday afternoon. Katherine felt their eyes on her like brands. She heard the murmurs starting already. Poor thing, must have been left. What kind of woman gets abandoned on her wedding day? She walked toward the nearest building, which happened to be the general store, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall in public. She would not give them that satisfaction. She would not be pitied more than she already was. The door opened before she reached it. A man stepped out, tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of creek water. He wore dusty ranch clothes and a hat that had seen better years. He looked at Katherine, really looked at her, not with pity or curiosity, but with something that seemed like understanding. "You look like you could use some help," he said quietly. Katherine straightened her spine. "I am fine, thank you. You are standing in the middle of the street in a wedding dress, and you look like you have walked through fire to get here." His voice was gentle despite the directness of his words. "I am Silas Yates. I have a ranch about 4 miles from here. I came into town for supplies, but I can offer you a meal and a place to rest if you need it. I do not need charity." Katherine's voice came out harder than she intended. She had heard enough pitying words for one lifetime. Silas nodded slowly. "Then maybe I need help. My housekeeper quit last month, rode off to California with a prospector. Place has been falling apart ever since. If you are looking for honest work, I could use someone who knows how to manage a household." Katherine studied him, searching for deception or ulterior motives, but his creek water eyes held steady. Behind her, she heard more whispers. Someone laughed. Her cheeks burned. "I will prove I am worth it," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Then louder, "I accept. When do I start?" "Right now, if you are willing." Silas gestured to a wagon hitched nearby. "Let me finish loading these supplies and we can head out." 20 minutes later, Katherine sat beside Silas on the wagon seat, leaving Great Bend behind. The town would have something to talk about for weeks, she knew. The abandoned bride taken in by the quiet rancher everyone knew but no one really knew. "Why did you help me?" Katherine asked as the buildings faded into the distance. "You do not know anything about me." Silas kept his eyes on the road. "I know what it looks like when someone has had the worst day of their life. I know what it feels like to have everyone watching, waiting for you to break." He paused. "About 5 years ago my wife died. Fever took her in 3 days. I stood at her grave and the whole town watched me. Some felt sorry. Most just wanted to see if I would cry. I did not give them the satisfaction." "I am sorry," Katherine said softly. "So am I, about whatever happened to you today. But you do not have to tell me unless you want to." They rode in comfortable silence for a while. The landscape opened up around them, vast and endless under the August sky. It was 1878, and Kansas stretched out like a promise of new beginnings. Katherine watched the prairie grass bend in the wind and felt something loosen in her chest. "His name was Robert Chandler," she said finally. "We were engaged for 6 months. My father arranged it because Robert's family owned land adjacent to ours. It seemed practical. I thought maybe love would come later." She laughed bitterly. "This morning, right before the ceremony, he rode off with Margaret Sinclair. Apparently they had been meeting secretly for months. Her father offered him a better deal." "He is a fool," Silas said simply. "Everyone in town thinks I am cursed now. No man will want a woman who has already been rejected once. Everyone in town is not as smart as they think they are." Silas guided the wagon around a deep rut in the road. "People love to talk. Gives them something to do besides face their own problems. But out here on the ranch, there is just work and sky and peace. Nobody to judge but the cattle, and they do not care much about human troubles." Katherine found herself almost smiling. "How many cattle do you have?" "About 200 head. It is not a huge operation, but it is mine. Built it up from nothing after Martha died. Gives me purpose." The ranch came into view as they crested a small hill. A modest house sat in a clearing, built from weathered wood but sturdy looking. A barn stood nearby, along with several outbuildings and corrals. It was not grand, but it looked like home. "It is beautiful," Katherine said honestly. "It is yours now too, at least while you are working here." Silas pulled the wagon to a stop near the house. "I will show you around, get you settled." The inside of the house was indeed in need of a woman's touch. Dust covered most surfaces, and dishes were piled in the wash basin. Clothes hung over chairs, and the floor needed sweeping. But the bones of the house were good. Large windows let in plenty of light, and someone had built the furniture with care. "The bedroom there is yours," Silas said, pointing to a door off the main room. "I sleep in the loft. Kitchen is through there. Make yourself comfortable. I will bring in the supplies." Katherine walked into the bedroom and closed the door behind her. The bed was made neatly, covered with a quilt that showed a woman's handiwork. Martha's quilt, probably. She sat down carefully, still in her ruined wedding dress, and finally allowed herself to cry. She cried for the humiliation, for the loss of the future she had imagined, for the cruelty of being made a spectacle. But underneath that, she cried with something that felt almost like relief. She had been dreading marrying Robert, if she was honest with herself. Had been dreading a life of cold practicality and dutiful obligation. When the tears stopped, Katherine stood and looked at herself in the small mirror on the wall. Her hair was a mess, her face blotchy and red, her dress beyond saving, but her eyes held determination. She had told Silas she would prove she was worth it. She meant it. She would show everyone, including herself, that Katherine Walsh was more than a rejected bride. She would make this work. Katherine found a basin and pitcher of water in the room. She washed her face and did her best to tidy her hair. The wedding dress would have to do for now, as she had nothing else to wear. When she emerged from the bedroom, Silas was putting supplies away in the kitchen. "I am sorry," he said, glancing at her. "I did not think about clothes. Tomorrow I can take you back into town to get some things, or there might be some of Martha's dresses in a trunk upstairs. She was about your size." "I would not want to intrude on her memory," Katherine said carefully. "She would have wanted them used. Martha was practical that way." Nothing bothered her more than waste. Silas smiled slightly, a sad but genuine expression. "She would have liked you, I think. She never could stand people who gave up easy. I do not intend to give up. I can see that." They worked together to prepare dinner. Katherine found ingredients for biscuits and beans. Simple fare but filling. Silas moved easily around the kitchen despite his claim of being helpless, and Katherine suspected he had been managing better than he let on. Perhaps he had offered her the job not because he desperately needed help, but because he saw she desperately needed saving. The thought made her grateful and uncomfortable in equal measure. They ate at the scarred wooden table as the sun set outside. Silas asked her about her life before today, and Katherine found herself talking more than she had expected. She told him about growing up on her father's small farm, about learning to read from her mother before a winter illness took her when Katherine was 12. About taking over the household duties, managing everything while her father worked the land. About slowly realizing that her father saw her as a commodity, someone to trade for better prospects. He was not cruel, she said, just practical. He thought marrying me off to Robert was securing my future. Maybe he was right, and I am foolish for running away. You are not foolish, Silas said firmly. Practical and right are not the same thing. Martha was the daughter of a shopkeeper. Everyone said I was foolish for marrying her instead of Clara Brennan, whose father owned half the county. But Martha made me happy. That was worth more than all Clara's father's land. You still miss her. Every day. But it gets easier to breathe around the missing, if that makes sense. Katherine nodded. It did make sense. After dinner, Silas showed her where everything was kept, explaining the routine of the ranch. He woke at dawn to tend the cattle and horses. Breakfast needed to be ready by 6. He usually came back to the house around noon for dinner, then worked until sunset. Supper was eaten around 8. I will not pretend the work is easy, he said. Ranch life is hard, but I pay fair wages. Room and board plus $30 a month. That should help you get back on your feet. $30 a month was generous, more than most housekeepers made. Katherine felt that familiar discomfort again, the sense that Silas was being too kind. Why are you really doing this? She asked. You do not know me. I could be terrible at housekeeping. I could steal from you. Silas leaned against the doorframe, considering her question. Because I remember what it felt like to want to disappear. After Martha died, I wanted to ride out into the prairie and never come back. But I did not, because someone has to feed the cattle and because running does not solve anything. You need a place to land to figure out what comes next. I can give you that. Everything else you will figure out yourself. His honesty disarmed her. Thank you, she said quietly. I will not let you down. I know. That night, Katherine lay in Martha's bed wearing one of Martha's nightgowns, borrowed from the trunk Silas had brought down from the loft. The quilt smelled faintly of lavender and dust. Through the walls, she could hear the sounds of the ranch settling for the night, horses moving in the barn. The wind against the house. Somewhere far off, a coyote called. It was nothing like the life she had imagined this morning when she woke up expecting to be married by evening. But as Katherine closed her eyes, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. She felt like maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. She woke before dawn to the sound of Silas moving around the house. Katherine dressed quickly in one of Martha's everyday dresses, a simple brown calico that fit reasonably well. She braided her hair and went to the kitchen to start breakfast. Silas was surprised to find eggs, bacon, and coffee ready when he came in from checking on the horses. You did not have to start today, he said. I figured you would want to rest. I told you I would prove I am worth it, Katherine said, pouring him coffee. That starts now. Something like respect crossed his face. All right then. Thank you for breakfast. They fell into a routine quickly. Katherine discovered she enjoyed the work, the purposefulness of it. There was satisfaction in transforming the dusty, neglected house into something clean and welcoming. She swept and scrubbed, washed clothes and mended tears. She cooked meals that were simple but hearty, the kind of food a working man needed. Silas was an easy employer. He did not demand much, did not hover or criticize. He treated her with respect, always saying please and thank you, never raising his voice. When something needed doing that was beyond her strength, he did it without complaint. When she made mistakes like burning the biscuits or oversalting the stew, he ate anyway and never mentioned it. On the third day, he took her into Great Bend to buy clothes and supplies. Katherine dreaded it, knowing the town would be full of talk about her. But Silas walked beside her with quiet confidence, his presence seeming to shield her from the worst of the stares and whispers. At the dress shop, Mrs. Henderson looked at Katherine with barely concealed curiosity. "I heard you took a position at the Yates ranch," she said, measuring Katherine for a work dress. "Yes, madam. Silas is a good man, lost his wife too young." Mrs. Henderson pinned fabric at Katherine's waist. "You be good to him, you hear. He deserves someone who will not cause trouble." Katherine bristled at the implication. "I am his housekeeper, Mrs. Henderson, nothing more, of course, dear. I am just saying." But her tone suggested she was thinking plenty more. Outside, Katherine fumed. "They all think I am some desperate woman throwing myself at you." Silas shrugged. "They will think what they want. Let them talk. We know the truth. Does it not bother you? Not anymore. Used to when Martha first died. Every widow in the county tried to bring me casseroles and marry me off to their daughters. I stopped coming to town for a year just to avoid it. But then I realized their opinions do not feed my cattle or mend my fences, so I stopped caring." Katherine wished she had that kind of confidence, but she was learning. The days turned into weeks. August became September, and the Kansas heat eased slightly. Katherine settled into life on the ranch, finding rhythm in the work. She learned which of Silas's horses was the gentlest, a mare named Daisy who let Katherine feed her apples. She learned how to tell when a storm was coming by the way the cattle bunched together. She learned that Silas sang quietly to himself while he worked, old songs his mother had taught him. They talked more as time passed. Silas was not a chatty man, but he opened up gradually. He told her about growing up in Missouri, about coming west with his brother who had died in the war, about meeting Martha at a church social and knowing immediately she was the one, about building this ranch from nothing, working as a hired hand for years to save enough for his own land. Katherine told him about her dreams of being a teacher, about how she had loved school and wanted to run her own classroom someday, about how her father had dismissed that dream as foolish, insisting she needed to marry instead. "Maybe you still could," Silas said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Teach, I mean. Great Bend is growing. They might need a school teacher. I only made it through 8th grade myself. I am not qualified. You are smarter than most people who think they are qualified. You could study, take the examination." The idea planted itself in Katherine's mind. Maybe her life was not over. Maybe it was just beginning differently than she had planned. In late September, trouble arrived in the form of 3 men on horseback. Katherine was hanging laundry when she heard them ride up. Something about the way they sat their horses made her uneasy. She walked quickly to the house, keeping the laundry basket between her and the strangers. Silas came out of the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The leader, a hard-faced man with a scar across his cheek, leaned forward in his saddle. "We are looking for Katherine Walsh. Heard she might be here." Katherine's heart pounded. She recognized the man now. Frank Morrison, one of Robert Chandler's friends. "What do you want with her?" Silas asked, his voice calm but his posture tense. "Her father wants her back. She ran off, caused a lot of embarrassment to the family. Mr. Walsh has a new arrangement made, another man willing to marry her. We are here to bring her home." "I am not going anywhere," Katherine said, stepping onto the porch. "I am 20 years old and I make my own choices." Frank's eyes narrowed. "Your daddy says different, says you are his responsibility until you are married." My father does not get to sell me off like livestock." Catherine's voice shook but held firm. "Now listen here, girl," Frank started, but Silas interrupted. "She said she is not going. That is the end of it. This is not your concern, Yates. It is when you are on my land threatening my employee." Silas moved to stand between the horseman and the porch. "Miss Walsh works for me. She has a legal right to be here. If her father has a problem with that, he can take it up with the sheriff. But you need to leave. Now." Frank's hand moved toward the gun at his hip. Catherine's breath caught. But Silas did not flinch. "Think carefully about what you are about to do," Silas said quietly. "Drawing a gun on a man on his own property, that will not end well for you." The tension stretched taut. Then one of the other men spoke up. "Come on, Frank, let it go. Not worth getting shot over." Frank glared at Silas, then at Katherine. "This is not over. Your daddy is not going to let this stand." "Then my father can come speak to me himself," Katherine said, surprised by her own boldness. "But I suspect he will not, because he knows I am right." The three men wheeled their horses around and rode off, leaving dust hanging in the air. Catherine's knees went weak. She sank onto the porch step. Silas turned to her. "Are you all right?" "I think so. I am sorry. I did not mean to bring trouble to your door." "You did not bring anything. They chose to come here." He sat down beside her on the step. "Is it true? Your father is trying to arrange another marriage, probably. He owes money. I am his only asset." Katherine laughed without humor. "At least Robert only wanted land. Who knows what this new man wants?" "You do not have to go back. He is my father." "That does not give him the right to force you into something you do not want." Silas looked at her seriously. "You are safe here, Katherine, for as long as you need." She believed him. More than that, she realized something had shifted between them. Somewhere in the last month, Silas had stopped being just her employer. He had become a friend, someone she trusted, someone she looked forward to seeing each morning. That night, Katherine could not sleep. She kept thinking about Frank Morrison's threat, about her father's determination to marry her off. But more than that, she thought about Silas standing between her and danger without hesitation, about the way he said her name, about how she had started watching for him to come in from the fields, how her day felt complete only after they had sat together over supper and talked about everything and nothing. She was falling for him. The realization should have terrified her. After all, the last man she had trusted had abandoned her at the altar. But Silas was nothing like Robert. Silas was steady and kind and honest. He saw her as a person, not a transaction. Did he feel the same way? Or was she just a responsibility to him, someone who needed help? The questions haunted her through the sleepless night. The next morning, Silas announced they were riding out to check on the northern pasture. "I need to move some cattle and I could use an extra pair of hands. You can ride, right?" "A little," Katherine said. She had ridden farm horses growing up, though never far. "Daisy will take care of you. She knows the ranch better than I do." They rode out together in the cool morning air. Katherine had borrowed a pair of Martha's riding clothes, a split skirt that made sitting a horse easier. The prairie stretched endlessly around them, golden grass waving under a blue sky. "It is beautiful out here," Katherine said. "So much space." "That is what I love about it. Out here you can breathe." Silas pointed toward a line of trees. "Creek runs through there. Good fishing if you know where to look." They worked for several hours, moving cattle to fresh grazing. It was hard work, but Katherine found she enjoyed it. There was something satisfying about working alongside Silas, moving as a team. He was patient, showing her what to do, praising her when she did well. By noon, they stopped by the creek to rest the horses and eat the lunch Katherine had packed. They sat on the bank, watching the water flow past. "Thank you for yesterday," Katherine said, "for standing up to Frank Morrison." "You do not need to thank me for that." "Yes, I do. Not many men would risk trouble for a woman they have only known a few weeks. Silas was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Of course. When I first saw you in town that day, standing in that wedding dress looking lost and defiant at the same time, I thought you were the bravest person I had ever seen. It takes courage to walk away from everything you know, even when it is hurting you. Especially then. Katherine felt her cheeks warm. I did not feel brave. I felt terrified. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what you have to do despite being afraid. He picked up a stone and tossed it into the creek. You remind me that it is possible to start over, to build something new from the ruins. I needed that reminder. Silas, Katherine started, then hesitated. She wanted to tell him how she felt, but the words stuck in her throat. What if she was wrong? What if he saw her only as an employee, or worse, a charity case? But before she could decide, Silas turned to look at her. His creek water eyes held something that made her breath catch. Katherine, I need to tell you something, and I hope it does not make things awkward between us. But I think you should know. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. These past few weeks, having you at the ranch, it has been like coming alive again. I look forward to coming in from the fields because I know you will be there. I find myself working faster so I can get back to the house sooner. And I know it has only been a short time, and I know you have just come out of a terrible situation, but I think I am falling in love with you. Katherine's heart felt like it might burst from her chest. You are. I am. And I do not expect anything from you. If you want to keep things as they are, employer and employee, I will respect that. If you want to leave, I will help you get wherever you want to go. But I had to tell you the truth. I am falling in love with you too, Katherine said softly. I have been afraid to admit it, even to myself. After Robert, I thought maybe I was broken, that I did not know how to recognize real feelings. But this is different. You are different. Silas reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough from work, warm and solid. I do not want to rush you. We can take all the time you need. I have spent my whole life doing what other people thought I should do at the pace they set. For once, I want to do what feels right to me. Katherine squeezed his hand. And this feels right. He smiled then, a full, genuine smile that transformed his serious face. It does it not? They sat by the creek holding hands, not needing words. The water flowed past, the horses grazed nearby, and Katherine felt something she had not felt since her mother died. She felt home. The ride back to the ranch was different. The air seemed clearer, the sky brighter. They talked easily, laughing about small things, sharing observations about the land and the animals. When they unsaddled the horses, their hands brushed and lingered. When Katherine went to the house to start supper, Silas followed and helped, standing closer than necessary. Over the next weeks, their relationship deepened. They were careful, both aware that Katherine was technically in Silas's employ and mindful of propriety. But love grew anyway, in shared glances and conversations that stretched late into the evening. In the way, Silas brought Katherine wildflowers from the prairie. In the way, Katherine made his favorite meals and mended his shirts with extra care. In October, the first cold snap arrived. Silas spent long days preparing the ranch for winter, repairing fences and outbuildings, stocking supplies. Katherine helped where she could, learning the rhythms of ranch life through the changing seasons. One evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Silas said, I need to go into town tomorrow. Supplies and to talk to the bank about a loan. I was thinking you might want to come, maybe visit the school. The school? You mentioned wanting to teach. Mrs. Fletcher, who runs the school, is getting on in years. She might appreciate an assistant, someone who could eventually take over. Katherine's heart leaped. Do you really think she would consider me? Only one way to find out. The next day they drove into Great Bend together. The town was busier than usual, people preparing for the coming winter. Katherine noticed the looks they got, riding together on the wagon seat. Let them look, she thought. She was done caring what small-minded people thought. At the school, Mrs. Fletcher turned out to be a tiny woman with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She looked Katherine up and down critically. "Silas says you want to teach," she said without preamble. "Yes, madam. I love learning and I think I could be good at it. What makes you qualified?" "Nothing on paper," Katherine admitted. "But I finished 8th grade and I have been reading everything I can get my hands on since. I am good with children. I am patient and firm when necessary, and I want this more than anything." Mrs. Fletcher studied her. "You are the girl who got left at the altar, then took work at the Yates place." "Yes, madam. Good for you. I never liked that Robert Chandler. Weak chin." Mrs. Fletcher walked to the bookshelf and pulled down several books. "Take these, study them. Come back in 2 weeks and teach me a lesson on any subject you choose. If you can do that well, I will hire you as my assistant. Pay is not much, but it is honest work." Katherine took the books with trembling hands. "Thank you. I will not disappoint you. See that you do not." Outside, Katherine wanted to dance down the street. "She is giving me a chance. She actually said she would hire me if I do well." Silas grinned. "I knew she would. Mrs. Fletcher appreciates determination. Thank you for this, for believing I could do it." "Katherine, you can do anything you set your mind to. I have known that since the day I met you." They completed their errands, Silas at the bank and feed store while Katherine bought fabric to make new clothes. At the mercantile, she ran into Mrs. Henderson again. "I hear congratulations are in order," Mrs. Henderson said. "Mrs. Fletcher told me she might be hiring an assistant. That is quite an opportunity." "Thank you. I hope to do well." Mrs. Henderson leaned in conspiratorially. "And how are things at the ranch? Silas treating you well?" "Very well." "He is a good employer." "Just an employer?" Mrs. Henderson's eyes gleamed with curiosity. Katherine felt her cheeks heat but met the older woman's gaze steadily. "That is all I am prepared to say on the matter." Mrs. Henderson laughed. "Good for you, dear. Keep them guessing. But for what it is worth, I think you two make a fine match. Silas has been alone too long and you deserve someone who will treat you right." It was the first kind thing anyone in town had said about them. Katherine found herself smiling. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. That means a lot." On the ride home, Silas asked what she and Mrs. Henderson had talked about. "She said we make a fine match," Katherine said carefully. "You think we do?" "I do. Do you, Katherine?" Silas pulled the wagon to a stop on the empty road. "I think you are the finest woman I have ever known. I think I am the luckiest man in Kansas to have you in my life. And I think, if you are willing, I would like to court you properly, with the intention of asking you to marry me when you are ready." Katherine's eyes filled with happy tears. "I would like that very much." He kissed her then, gentle and sweet, a promise of more to come. The prairie stretched around them under the endless sky, and Katherine felt like she could fly. The next 2 weeks, Katherine studied harder than she had ever studied in her life. She pored over the books Mrs. Fletcher had given her, planning and replanning her lesson. Silas helped, listening to her practice and offering suggestions. His quiet confidence bolstered her own. On the appointed day, she returned to the school. Mrs. Fletcher sat at a student desk, arms crossed, waiting. Katherine taught a lesson on westward expansion, connecting history to the experiences of people in Great Bend. She had prepared visual aids, drawn maps, created questions to engage students. She poured her heart into it, forgetting to be nervous in her enthusiasm for the subject. When she finished, Mrs. Fletcher was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. "You will do. Come Monday you start as my assistant. 7 in the morning, dismiss at 3, $20 a month to start. Katherine wanted to hug her but settled for a heartfelt thank you. She had done it. She had proven she could be more than a rejected bride or a farmer's daughter. She could be a teacher. That night, she and Silas celebrated with a special supper. Katherine had made a cake, a luxury of sugar and eggs they rarely indulged in. They ate on the porch despite the November chill, wrapped in blankets, watching stars emerge. "I am proud of you," Silas said. "You worked hard for this. I could not have done it without you. You gave me the chance to find myself again. You were always there, Katherine. You just needed space to breathe." She leaned against him, comfortable in his warmth. "What happens now? I will be working in town during the days. I cannot manage the household and teach both." "I figured that. I can hire someone to help with the housework. Or I can manage myself like I did before you came. Either way, we will figure it out." "Silas, I need to know something. When you said you wanted to court me, what did you imagine? How does this work with me living at the ranch?" He was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, I had not thought that far ahead. But if you want to move into town, I understand. We can still see each other on weekends and evenings." The thought of leaving the ranch, leaving Silas, made Katherine's heart ache. But she also knew propriety mattered, especially if she was going to be a teacher. Parents would not want their children taught by a woman living unchaperoned with a man. "Maybe I could stay in town during the week," she said slowly. "There is a boarding house for women. I could come back to the ranch on weekends, if that is what you want." "What I want is to stay here with you, but I know how people talk. I do not want to ruin my chance at teaching before I even start." "You are right. I hate it, but you are right." Silas took her hand. "We will make it work. And Katherine, I want you to know, when I do ask you to marry me properly, it will not be because of convenience or propriety. It will be because I cannot imagine my life without you. I feel the same way." They sat together until the cold drove them inside. Katherine went to her bedroom, but sleep was a long time coming. So much had changed in just a few months. She had gone from a woman with no prospects to someone with a career and a man she loved. It felt like a dream. The next week, Katherine moved into the boarding house in Great Bend. Mrs. Palmer, who ran it, was a strict but fair woman who charged $5 a week for a small room and 2 meals a day. It was not home, but it was respectable. Teaching was harder than Katherine had imagined and more rewarding. The students, ranging from 6 to 14, were a mix of eager learners and reluctant ones. Katherine threw herself into the work, determined to reach each child. Mrs. Fletcher was a demanding mentor but a fair one, offering advice and criticism in equal measure. The weekends became precious. Every Friday after school, Silas would be waiting with the wagon to take Katherine back to the ranch. They would spend Saturday and Sunday working side by side, talking, stealing kisses when no one was around to see. Sunday evenings, the ride back to town, grew harder and harder. Winter settled in, bringing cold and snow. Katherine learned to navigate the weather, wrapping herself in layers for the short walk from the boarding house to the school. The students brought stories of life on the ranches and farms, of animals and adventures. Katherine loved listening to them, loved seeing their minds open to new ideas. In December, her father came to town. Katherine was leaving the school when she saw him standing by the hitching post. Thomas Walsh looked older than she remembered, his face more lined. He had his hat in his hands, turning it nervously. "Katherine," he said, "can we talk?" "There is nothing to say, Father. Please, just 5 minutes." Against her better judgment, Katherine nodded. They walked a little way from the school, stopping under a bare tree. "I owe you an apology," Thomas said heavily. "I thought I was doing right by you, arranging that marriage to Robert. I thought I was securing your future. But I see now I was wrong. I treated you like property, not like my daughter." Katherine was surprised. She had expected anger or demands, not contrition. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I heard you are teaching now. Heard you are living in town, doing well for yourself. I wanted to see if it was true." He looked at her with something like pride. "You look good, Katherine. Happy." "I am happy. Happier than I have ever been." "And this man, Silas Yates, is he treating you well?" "He is. He respects me, values my opinions. He supports my dreams." Thomas nodded slowly. "That is all a father can ask for. I am sorry I could not see what you needed back then. I was so worried about money, about keeping the farm, that I forgot what really mattered." "Thank you for saying that," Katherine said quietly. "I have been angry with you for a long time. Maybe I can start to let that go. I do not expect forgiveness. But I would like to be part of your life again if you will let me." Katherine thought about it. Part of her wanted to refuse, to punish him for trying to force her into a loveless marriage. But she saw genuine regret in his eyes, and holding on to anger would only hurt her. "All right," she said. "We can try, but things are different now. I make my own choices." "I understand. And Katherine, for what it is worth, I am proud of you. Your mother would be too." They parted awkwardly, but with a kind of peace. Katherine walked back to the boarding house feeling lighter. She had not realized how much her father's betrayal had weighed on her until she felt that weight lift. When she told Silas about it that weekend, he listened carefully. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Relieved. Confused. Happy, I think." He actually apologized. "I never expected that." "Do you want to see him again?" "Maybe. Eventually. But right now I want to focus on my life here, on teaching, on us." Silas pulled her close. "Speaking of us, I have been thinking. I know we agreed to wait, to take things slow, but Katherine, I do not want to wait any more. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to go to sleep holding you every night. I want everyone to know that you are mine and I am yours." Katherine's heart raced. "What are you saying?" He got down on one knee right there in the kitchen. "I am saying I love you. I am saying you are the best thing that ever happened to me. I am saying, will you marry me?" "Yes." The word came out before she even thought about it. "Yes, absolutely yes." Silas stood and kissed her deeply. When they broke apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. "I do not have a ring yet," Silas said. "I wanted to ask before I lost my nerve." "I do not need a ring, I just need you. You will have both. And Katherine, I want to do this right. A proper wedding, as fancy or simple as you want. I want you to have the day you deserve." Katherine thought about her last almost wedding, the expensive dress and elaborate plans, none of which had mattered when the groom did not show up. "I want something small," she said. "Just us and maybe a few friends, something that feels real. Then that is what we will have." They decided to wait until spring to marry, giving Katherine time to finish the school year and Silas time to prepare the ranch. Katherine told Mrs. Fletcher, who surprised her by looking pleased. "About time that man settled down again," Mrs. Fletcher said. "And you are good for him. I can tell. But I expect you to continue teaching after you are married. I plan to, if you will have me. Married women teaching is not common, but I do not care about common. You are good at this. The children love you. We will make it work." The news spread through Great Bend quickly. To Katherine's surprise, most people seemed genuinely happy for them. Only a few gossips whispered about unseemly haste or questioned Silas's judgment. But their voices were drowned out by goodwill. Mrs. Palmer threw Katherine a small party at the boarding house. The other teachers gave her advice and shared stories. Even Mrs. Henderson came by with a set of good dish towels, claiming every bride needed proper linens. As winter turned to spring, Katherine felt her happiness grow. The dark day when she stood abandoned at the altar seemed like a lifetime ago. That girl who ran away in a ruined wedding dress had been lost and broken. But she had found herself again, had built a new life from nothing. In April, with wildflowers blooming across the prairie, Katherine Walsh became Katherine Yates. The ceremony took place at the ranch, conducted by the circuit preacher. Katherine wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself. Silas wore his best suit, his hair neatly combed, his eyes full of love. Thomas Walsh attended, standing quietly in the back. Mrs. Fletcher came, along with several of Katherine's fellow teachers. A few of Silas's rancher friends showed up with their families. It was small and perfect. When the preacher said they could kiss, Silas cupped Katherine's face gently. "I love you, Mrs. Yates. I love you too." The kiss was sweet and full of promise. After the ceremony, they had a simple meal. People ate and talked and laughed. Children ran around the yard playing games. Katherine looked around at the gathering and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She had been given a second chance at love, at life. As the sun set, the guests departed. Finally, Katherine and Silas were alone in the house that was now truly theirs together. "Happy?" Silas asked, pulling her into his arms. "Happier than I knew I could be." That night, they consummated their marriage in the bedroom that had once been Katherine's alone. Silas was gentle and patient, making sure Katherine felt safe and cherished. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Katherine felt complete in a way she never had before. The next days and weeks were a time of adjustment and joy. Katherine continued teaching during the days, but now she came home each evening to Silas and the ranch. They hired a girl from town, Sarah Jenkins, to help with some of the housework, which freed Katherine to focus on lesson planning and grading. Life fell into a comfortable rhythm. Spring work on the ranch kept Silas busy, but he always made time for Katherine. They rode out together when they could, exploring the land. They talked about their dreams for the future. Silas wanted to expand the cattle operation. Katherine wanted to start a lending library at the school. In June, Katherine realized she was pregnant. The symptoms were unmistakable, though she barely dared to hope. When she told Silas, he picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy, Katherine?" "I am the happiest man alive," they told Mrs. Fletcher, who immediately started planning for Katherine's absence. "You will need to stop teaching in your 6th month," she said firmly, "but I expect you back after the baby comes. We will work it out." The pregnancy was not easy. Katherine suffered from terrible morning sickness through the summer. The heat made her uncomfortable and she tired easily. But Silas was attentive, making sure she rested, bringing her cool drinks, rubbing her swollen feet in the evenings. In September, Katherine reluctantly stopped teaching. Her belly was too large to hide, and she could barely stand for long periods. She missed the children and the work, but she knew it was necessary. The fall passed slowly. Katherine prepared for the baby, sewing tiny clothes and blankets. Silas converted a corner of the bedroom into a nursery area, building a beautiful cradle from oak wood. They argued playfully about names, unable to agree on anything. In January 1879, during a snowstorm, Katherine went into labor. Silas rode through the blizzard to fetch the doctor and Mrs. Palmer, who served as the town midwife. The labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Katherine thought she might die from the pain, but finally, as dawn broke, she heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's cry. "It is a boy, Mrs. Palmer announced, placing the tiny bundle in Katherine's arms. Katherine looked down at her son through tears of exhaustion and joy. He was perfect, small and red and absolutely perfect. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "I am your mama." Silas sat beside her on the bed, his face full of wonder. "He is beautiful. You are beautiful. Thank you." They named him Samuel Thomas Yates, after Silas's brother and Katherine's father. Samuel had dark hair like his father and lungs that proclaimed his displeasure loudly when hungry. The first months of parenthood were exhausting. Samuel woke every few hours to nurse. Katherine was tired constantly, her body recovering from the birth while adjusting to this new demanding life. But every time she looked at her son, every time Silas held him with such gentle care, Katherine felt her heart expand. Thomas Walsh came to visit when Samuel was a month old. He held his grandson with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he told Katherine, "for letting me be part of his life. I promise I will be a better grandfather than I was a father." "I believe you," Katherine said. And she did. Spring came again, bringing new life to the ranch. Katherine began teaching again part-time, bringing Samuel with her to school. The children loved having a baby in the classroom and fought over who got to help mind him. Mrs. Fletcher pretended to be annoyed but was secretly charmed. Life was not always easy. Money was tight sometimes. The cattle market fluctuated. There were droughts and storms and all the challenges of ranch life. But Katherine and Silas faced everything together, their love growing deeper with each shared struggle and triumph. On their second anniversary, Silas gave Katherine a beautiful leather-bound journal. "For writing down our story," he said. "So Samuel will know where he came from." Katherine started writing that night, beginning with the day she stumbled into Great Bend in a ruined wedding dress. She wrote about Silas offering her a job, about falling in love, about building a life together. She wrote about pain and healing, about second chances and hope. The years passed, marked by seasons and milestones. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the ranch and animals. When he was 3, Katherine became pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and she delivered a healthy baby girl they named Martha Louise after Silas's first wife. "Are you sure?" Katherine asked when Silas suggested the name. "I do not want to hurt you." "Martha would have loved you," Silas said. "She would have loved our children. Naming our daughter after her honors her memory. It feels right." Little Martha was easier than Samuel had been, a calm baby who slept well and smiled often. Samuel was a devoted big brother, always wanting to help with the baby. Katherine continued teaching, though now only 3 days a week. Silas's ranch prospered. They added more land, hired help during busy seasons. They were not rich, but they were comfortable and happy. When Samuel was 7 and Martha 4, Katherine discovered she was pregnant again. This baby, another boy they named James Robert, completed their family. James had Katherine's green eyes and Silas's quiet temperament. The children grew up wild and loved on the ranch. They learned to ride almost before they could walk. They helped with chores, attended school in town, and filled the house with noise and laughter. Katherine and Silas's love continued to deepen. They still made time for each other, stealing moments alone when possible. They still talked late into the night about everything and nothing. They still looked at each other with the same wonder they had felt that first year. "You ever think about that day in Great Bend?" Silas asked one evening when the children were asleep. They sat on the porch, watching the sunset like they had done thousands of times before. "Sometimes," Katherine admitted, "it feels like a different life, a different person. Do you have any regrets?" "Not a single one. Robert Chandler leaving me at the altar was the best thing that ever happened to me. It brought me here. It brought me you. I love you, Katherine Yates." "I love you too, Silas Yates, always." The children thrived. Samuel showed an aptitude for ranching and declared he would take over the operation someday. Martha inherited her mother's love of learning and announced she wanted to be a teacher too. James was still figuring out his path, but he was only 5. Thomas Walsh remained part of their lives until he passed peacefully in his sleep when Samuel was 10. Before he died, He told Katherine he was proud of her, that she had been right to follow her heart. Mrs. Fletcher retired when Katherine was 30, and Katherine took over as the head teacher. She ran the school for another 20 years, influencing hundreds of children. Many of her former students went on to become teachers themselves, spreading the love of learning she had instilled in them. The ranch continued to grow. Silas and Samuel worked side by side, building something to pass down through generations. Martha did become a teacher, taking a position in Wichita but coming home often. James eventually decided he wanted to study law, much to everyone's surprise. Through all of it, Katherine and Silas remained each other's constant. They weathered droughts and depressions, celebrated births and mourned deaths. Their hair turned gray, their bodies slowed, but their love stayed strong. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a party. The ranch was full of people, friends and family gathered to celebrate. Katherine stood beside Silas, looking at the life they had built together, and felt overwhelming gratitude. "What are you thinking?" Silas asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "I am thinking about that terrified girl in a wedding dress, and about the kind man who offered her a chance when no one else would. I am thinking about how far we have come. I am thinking that I am still the luckiest man in Kansas," Silas said. "Maybe the luckiest man alive. We are both lucky. We found each other when we needed it most." They danced that night under the stars, surrounded by the people they loved. Samuel had brought his sweetheart, a rancher's daughter from the next county. Martha danced with a young teacher she had met in Wichita. James showed off his acceptance letter to law school. It was perfect. As Katherine and Silas grew older, they began to slow down. Silas handed more and more of the ranch work to Samuel, who ran it with skill and dedication. Katherine retired from teaching at 55, finally ready to rest. They spent their final years in peace. Grandchildren came, filling the house with new life and laughter. They sat on the porch and told stories about the old days, about how they met and fell in love. The grandchildren never tired of hearing about Grandma Katherine showing up in town in a wedding dress, or about Grandpa Silas offering her a job when everyone else turned away. "And she said, 'I will prove I am worth it,'" Silas would always add. And she did. Every single day she proved it. When Silas passed at 78, Katherine held his hand until the end. He went peacefully, surrounded by family, his last words a whispered, "I love you," to his wife. Katherine lived 3 more years, long enough to see Samuel's first son born, and named Silas in honor of his grandfather. She spent those years writing in her journal, finishing the story she had started so long ago. She wanted her grandchildren and great-grandchildren to know that life could begin at the worst moment, that love could be found in unexpected places, that courage meant trying even when you were afraid. On a warm spring day, Katherine passed away in her sleep in the bedroom she had shared with Silas for over 50 years. She was buried beside him on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a sky that stretched forever. Her children found the journal after she died. They gathered to read it together, tears streaming down their faces as they lived through their parents' love story again. The journal became a family treasure, passed down through generations. Years later, Samuel's grandson would stand on that same hill, looking out over the ranch his great-great-grandfather built. He would think about Katherine Walsh, the rejected bride who became the heart of their family. He would think about how one act of kindness, one offer of help, had rippled through time to create all of this. The ranch still stood. The school Katherine taught at was now named in her honor. The love she and Silas shared had become legend in Great Bend, a story told to show that happy endings were possible even after the darkest beginnings. Katherine had whispered, "I will prove I am worth it," on a day when she felt worthless. And she had proven it, not just to the town that rejected her or the father who tried to sell her, but to herself. She had proven that she was brave and strong and capable of more than anyone imagined. But more than that, she had proven that love, real love, was worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth believing in even when everything seemed lost. Her story lived on, a testament to second chances and the transformative power of love. In the end, Katherine Walsh Yates had not just survived her worst day. She had used it as the foundation to build a life of purpose, joy, and deep, abiding love. And that was worth everything. The sun set over the Kansas prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the same colors Katherine and Silas had watched together countless times. The ranch house stood solid against the horizon, full of the descendants of their love. And if you listened closely on quiet evenings, some said you could still hear them, laughing together on the porch, their love echoing through time. It was a love story for the ages, beginning with rejection and ending with redemption, proving that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best beginnings, and that true love, when found, lasts forever.